let's do it. Okay, welcome everyone. This is another day, another video, another guide. Today I'll be making a TVT guide, a mech guide, since a lot of people have been requesting that, and the old guide for mech is kind of outdated, because the last one I did was with reactor Hellions, and that one doesn't really work anymore because of the, well, reactor cyclone builds. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that, how to execute it, and how to successfully transition to mech without dying. So I'm doing this live on stream, which is why you see all these things around me. So if I get distracted, it's because of the potatoes in the chat distracting me. Because it is on my second screen, I should probably close the chat, but you know me, casual streamer. Okay, so this is, like I said, TVT guide. And I'm going to teach you guys and kind of explain, walk you through what you should be doing. Whoa. And what you should be careful of, especially, you know, when the opponent does the first push, because that's what most players are struggling with. So yeah. First off, like always, start off with walling off your ramp, no matter what matchup you're playing. It's always good, and there's no reason not to. You want to go gas first.
What's going on?
And yeah, just standard expand, standard Reaper expand, and then we're gonna take it into the mid game with really fast 3cc. And basically your whole goal of this build is to get an expand as fast as you can, to identify what your opponent is doing, and then while you're going 3 command centers, super like economic build, to just defend your opponent's push. And there's 2 possible situations that will happen. Oh, you also want to scout on 17 supply, which I forgot to send out. So 2 things will happen in the games when you do this build. One is your opponent is also going to be going 3cc, which then turns into a normal game, and you know, you just play a normal macro game. And 2, which is the one that people struggle with, your opponent will do a 2 base push while you're having 3 command centers, and you have a very good chance to die if you don't react properly. So I'm going to show you guys how to defend that, and once you learn how to defend that, the whole build, you know, is way better, because once you stop that 2 base push, you have 3 bases and you're just super far ahead in economy, and you just end up winning the game off of it. So the first SCV scout, what you want to be doing with it, again on 17 supply, is to check if your opponent is expanding or not. So the reason why that is super important is you can adjust your playstyle and your build a little bit. So I'm gonna pause right here.
Hold position.
So what I mean by adjust the playstyle and the build, no matter what you scout, unless it's like 3 proxy barracks, you will be going for reactor cyclones. Because they're just very good in the early game, and they can pretty much defend anything. So let's say I scouted that the opponent is going 2 gas, kind of like a 1 base build push. What you would do is still go for reactor cyclones, but just kind of like be more defensive. You wouldn't be like attacking or poking, and you would kind of prepare yourself mentally to you know, defend, to position your units, to be careful of the drops and so on. If you see that your opponent is also expanding, you can be more relaxed. You can maybe get a third on the spot, on the 3rd base instead of making it to your main base, and so on. So you're just adjusting your playstyle a little bit, and once the SV confirms that, then your Reaper acts accordingly. So if you saw that he's missing buildings in his main base, what you want to do is scout around with your Reaper and see if he's making 3 proxy barracks with like Reaper rush, maybe proxy marauders, or just proxy reactor cyclones, and then kind of play around it. But if the opponent is just playing standard, or he's doing 1 base from his own main base, your Reaper is there to scout and kind of give you that follow-up scout, and you know, see what he's doing and prepare yourself accordingly. So if it's like a cloak banshee, you want to get an engineering bay, get some turrets. But the point of it all is you don't try to deviate from your build too much. You don't need to, you know, make a starport and go siege things. The reactor cyclones will literally kill everything there is in the early game. So that's why this build is good. You don't need to think about it. You just make cyclones. Okay.
Operation commencing.
So once the CC starts on the natural, you're gonna start a factory with your first 100 gas, start another supply depot, and start the second gas. From here on out, let's assume that the opponent is still Reaper, or also Reaper expanding, because we don't want to cover every possible scenario. It is a build order guide after all. So you want to scout with your Reaper, make sure to know what your opponent is doing after the factory, if he's also going for reactor cyclones, if he's going for Banshee after expanding, or third CC, or whatever else. So as soon as my factory finishes, I swap it onto the reactor, get the orbital, and I usually like to get a Hellion and a Cyclone in the first round. And the reason for that is his Reaper might arrive at your base, so you want something, you know, fast to get out and deal with that. Plus, sometimes people open with 2 Reapers, so that extra, like 1 unit Hellion will help you deal with that super early without taking too much damage. So again, assuming that he did expand, what you want to do at this point is scout the tech that he's going for. So again, you know how to adjust your playstyle, how scared you need to be, and so on. I'm gonna scout. I mean, this map is pretty bad for scouting, since there's no back entrance. But around this time, I usually throw down my third CC, if both my opponent and I are expanding. And let's say, like this Potato AI, he's going for some kind of bio play. You just keep making your reactor cyclones, and not worry about a thing. Once your third CC is in place, whether it's in your main base or on the spot on the third base, like I just put mine, you're going to keep macroing, and you're actually going to add gases on your natural pretty early, because you will need to transition to more factories soon, because you can't stay on, you know, just cyclones forever. You know, you're going to need siege tanks, you're going to need starport, and so on to deal with other things. Again, if you did Cycloak Banshee, add an engineering bay, make, you know, 1 turret per base, maybe even a missile turret here, to make sure you can defend that a lot easier. So you can see all the gas is going into the cyclones still. You want to have those strong tech units, and you don't want to skip any units because you can die very quickly without this. And eventually you'll see a point where I'm making 2 cyclones but I have 200 gas, then you throw down 2 extra factories, and you can still be producing cyclones after that. As you can see, 100 gas, start another cyclone, and soon I'll be able to throw down another one. Boom. You can put a Hellion that you have in front of his base so you can kind of see when he's moving out. And another thing I suggest is you can split up your cyclones a little bit, so in case he's dropping, you have 4 cyclones in the main, and then you have more cyclones on this side to kind of defend any pokes early game on this side. Once your 2 factories over here are done, or close to being done, you can stop making reactor cyclones. You can, you know, start transitioning slowly, start making reactor Hellions, add 2 tech labs, and then just start pumping out siege tanks. And at this point, I'm going to pause right here. This is the point in the game where you should know what your opponent is doing, whether through Reaper Scout, Hellion, like poke or whatever, or you can just scan if you have no idea what your opponent is doing. So, you should know what you're facing, and based off of that, that's how you should be playing this matchup. So, if the opponent again is going for some heavy 2-base play, you need to be prepared for that. If it's like, you know, double marine stem drop, you need to be ready to defend it if it's in your main base, if it's in your third base. If it's some kind of like a strong push with siege tanks, you need to intercept that push before it sieges up your third. People make the mistake of, you know, letting their opponent get to the third and then they try to defend it when the tanks are sieged up. You're probably not going to win that fight. So you need to try intercept siege tank pushes while it's like on the middle of the map. Maybe even make your opponent stim, pick off medevacs, and so on. And just like I said, once again, like kind of adapt your playstyle and adapt your unit movement to what your opponent is doing. You don't change your build. This is the build, and it's good against everything. I've been playing this for the past 3 months, I think, or 2 months maybe. And this is kind of like what I call the early game in this build. The mid game starts when the siege tank production starts. And I'm about to start 2 siege tanks at the time. I'll also be adding 2 armories and an engineering bay. Uh, if, again, assuming the opponent didn't go cloak banshees, otherwise I would have engineering bay earlier. Now, I'm also adding a starport, making a reactor, because you will need Vikings to deal with any kinds of drops. And the first 2 siege things that you make will go to your 3rd base, a siege up there. The reason for that is the most common, attack point for the opponent is always the 3rd base, which is what you want to have secured. It's actually really risky for your opponent to drop in your main base, especially in a map like this where the main base is very open, because what will happen is he's going to do the drop, and even if your Cyclones are a little bit out of position, he cannot run away, most likely. He will end up losing Marines, and if he tries to load up instantly and move away, you can lock down on the medevacs and pew them to death. So it's very risky for your opponent to do that. And once you establish a 3rd, once you get to your first 2 siege tanks out, you can make a sensor tower in the main base to kind of just, make your opponent not want to go there. Because usually in TVT, it's like a little bit of a mind game. When people see that you have a sensor tower in the main, they don't really drop there. Because, you have a sensor tower, so they're like, oh, he's going to know and stuff like that. Even though it's mostly, when I do it, it's mostly fake and I have no units there. So that's something to consider as well. And one thing that is super important that you guys need to keep track of, the number one thing when you play mech is you need to know where your opponent's army is. If you don't know where your army is, you will lose the game super quick.
Oh, welcome. Pay close attention. Hopefully you'll learn something.
Well, apparently notifications are not disabled. So one thing that you need to do is keep track of your opponent's army, because if you're out of position, even for 1 second, you will end up taking a lot of damage or potentially even lose the game if your siege things are not sieged, or if he just pushes through here, to the natural, and you have like your tanks on the 3rd, you cannot defend that. So keep track of your opponent's army. Use scans if you don't have Hellions to put at random places or sensor towers, and don't get wrecked because of it. Once you learn the ability to do this build properly up until this point and maybe a minute 2 later, and defend that first harass, first push, and you're able to keep track of your opponent's army in the mid and late game, you will literally have like basically 100% win rate. Okay, let's keep going.
Operation commencing.
So again, making Hellions, gonna make double armory. You gotta keep making supply depots, don't get supply blocked. Start producing siege tanks at this point. And you need to focus on getting your siege tanks out as fast as you can from the moment the factories finish. You can put your barracks, floating it over here so you can have a little bit of a spotter. Start making some Vikings. Get your gases in the 3rd as well. And again, I have the Hellion here, so I know that there's no army coming, assuming this is a real game. But let's say the Hellion dies, what I would do is put 1 Hellion there, 1 Hellion there. You'll see it soon on the minimap where it is. So that way, I have some vision and I know where my opponent's army is going. So I have a Hellion here, and Hellion on this side, so I would see if the opponent is pushing from this side or he's going for a 3rd. Once the siege tanks are done, like I mentioned, I'm going to send them to the 3rd, siege them up there. You can make a sensor tower in the main to make it, easier for you to defend. Maybe make a missile turret or 2. And from here on out, since you are pretty safe, what you can do is gather all your units, or your mobile units, keep them together, and just siege up siege tanks at certain positions. Also around here, add more factories, get 1-1 started, and from here on out I'm feeling pretty safe, because this is the hardest point to get to, I guess, and this is where you will be playing against that big push. So he will either be dropping or he will be attacking here, here, or here. That's why I have these 2 tanks sieged up, and then all the other tanks I like to keep with my army, so I'm very mobile and I can just, move around wherever I need to go. Again, if he goes for the main base at this point, it would be a disaster, because you have Vikings as well and all these units. So what you can do is, you know, if you don't want to be active all the time, you can even split up these tanks like this and just have them sieged up kind of like everywhere, and then you move your Cyclone Hellion army wherever you need to go. You can start your 5th base, and with this number of Hellions, you can feel free to just spread them out on the map a little bit to get more vision. Just like you would do in Bio versus Bio, you can get Blue Flame, keep producing Vikings, and yeah, at this point, you're gonna have quite a few minerals coming in your bank. So this is around the time where I start producing my missile turrets, because you don't need that many Hellions. Like, you just need, you know, 10, 15 Hellions to turn into Hellbats to tank for the siege tanks. But other than that, you don't want to, you know, have your army be full Hellion army. From here on out, people often don't know what to do. Like, they don't know what their role is. Like, when do I attack? Do I just stay, you know, home forever? Like, what am I supposed to do? Again, you can reinforce the 3rd. I suggest leaving 3 tanks on the 3rd always, because that's one vulnerable position. It's very hard to drop into Mech's player natural or main base because of Vikings, but 3rd can always be attacked with, you know, a lot of units and kind of destroyed. Keep your upgrades going. Get 2-2 on the way as soon as 1-1 finishes. Upgrades are super, super important. You can leave a couple of Hellbats on your 3rd as well to just tank up for that damage. And I'm slowly going to get my 4th base. And just from this point on, you just keep expanding. Don't fall behind. Don't turtle on you know, 3 base forever. You got to keep expanding. Once my 4th lands, I'm going to make a 5th base, and so on and so on. Now, couple of things that you need to be very, very careful of. Doom drops. Have your Vikings in position, and this is why you need to know where your opponent's army is, because if you see a lot of medevacs, you need to be aware of Doom drops. Have your Vikings in position to shut it down, because if you've ever played Mech, you will know that #1 way to lose is getting Doom drop and getting destroyed completely. Number 2, do not get out positioned. If he's going for a Marine Marauder siege tank army, if he sieges up in a, you know, bad position for you, you won't be able to break it that easily. If you do get in those kind of positions, use Liberators to, you know, make him move his siege tanks. And the 3rd, which is probably the thing you'll meet the most, is Terrans going for Viking control or air control, and then going to Liberators, Liberator range, you know, and trying to kill your tanks that way. The moment you recognize that he's doing that, you need to start making Thors, and you could even add more starports for Ravens. Now, you saw that I didn't really, you know, scout this game. The reason for that is because, well, I was explaining the build. But throughout the game, you could also send your Hellions around. You can even make a medevac, drop some Hellions in the middle line, kill some SCVs, and just kind of trade those Hellions for his SCVs, because again, you're going to have a lot of minerals, and you want your Mech army to be siege tanks, Vikings, Ravens, Thors in the end. So those are the things you need to be careful of. Thors are the, you know, the best fast response to the air army that he can make. And then the ultimate army that you should be going for with Mech is not battlecruisers. Battlecruisers are awful. You need to go for siege tank, Viking, and Ravens. Ravens with the latest buff of Seeker Missile are really good in TVT. The Seeker Missile does 30 damage, and as you know, Marines have 55 health. So, is it 55? Yes. Yes, they have 55 health. So 2 Seeker Missiles will completely destroy Marines. Like, you will splash the Marines and kill them all. Vikings have super low health, so Seeker Missiles will do quite a lot of damage to them as well. And that is like your ultimate late game composition. Now, at this point, you have 2 options. As far as the Mech army goes, and you know, people, this is what I mentioned earlier, people don't know what to do, and they're not sure what they're supposed to do right now. Do they attack? Do they camp? Do they go battlecruiser? Do they keep expanding? Do they attack? Do they not attack? Like, what are they supposed to do? So there's 2 options. Option number 1 is what I like to do, actually there's three options. Option number one is to just attack and make more factories and just continuously like make units and kind of just keep attacking because mech units beat bio and so on. So you're kind of playing like the, I guess the bio version of mech where you're just kind of massing siege tanks, hellbats, and Vikings and just kind of try to brute force. Number two is never attack and just from here on out, once you're on 4 base, do not get Ravens on 3 base, please. That's no. Just you will not have enough gas. You need to go Ravens once you have 4 bases because then you can actually support Ravens. So, second option is at this point you're gonna keep making command centers, keep expanding, but you're never gonna attack. You're gonna go Ravens, and then you're gonna get to that ultimate army composition, and work off of that. Or the option number 3, which is what I like to do, is once I get to maxed out army, I instantly push across the map. That's when you should have 2-2 as well. While I transition to Ravens. So what I would do is establish my 4th. The moment the 4th base is up, leave 1-2 tanks there, leave 2-3 tanks on the 3rd, and start moving across the map with all your other units. While you add, 2, 3, 4 starports, prepare to go Ravens, get the Raven upgrade, get 3-3 for your mech, keep making bases, make 5th, make more missile turrets. Again, you don't want your main base to be dropped, so making turrets is fine as long as that part of your base is fine. And I also even like to add a planetary fortress in the main once I'm on like 5-6 bases because, if he goes through the missile turrets and then drops into planetary, that's not gonna work at all. So that's something. Those 3 playstyles that I just told you about is something that you need to figure out what works for you. I kind of found myself in the mix of the first 2, and that's what I enjoy the most. Another thing you need to be careful of. I see people do this very often, where they have tanks in front, they siege up, and then the Hellbats are stuck behind. You need to be very careful, and let me kill these Cyclones. They should be dead at this point in the game. So this is how you should use your mech army. This is how your mech army should be moving. Always have 1 or 2 Hellions. Don't put them all in Hellbat, because if you click here, let's say, your 2 Hellions are going to go in front and give you the scouting without you actually doing anything. Meanwhile, Hellbats are protecting the tanks. So even if you get caught on siege, let's say these 3 Hellions are the enemy army. Even if you get caught on siege, once you siege up, the bio or the opponent's army will be shooting at the Hellbats, giving your siege tank enough time to siege up and win the fight. On the other hand, if something like this happens, where your army is moving like this, he comes, when you siege up, you're going to lose these 6 siege tanks instantly, and then he's going to pull back, and that's not something you want to happen. So be careful how you move your army. We actually had a clan war recently. I forgot who was playing. I think it was Yepin. He was playing against Zerg, but the same rule applies, where he sieged up like this, and the enemy army was like, let's say here. He moved away with Hellbats, and he lost the whole army, because the only Hellbats point is to tank for the tanks. They're not going to deal any damage, especially against bio in TVT. So be careful how you use your units, make sure your Vikings are close, and again, identify what your opponent is doing, whether it's early, mid, or late game, and just play around it. Just use the mech units you have. If you see air transition, start producing Thors, start transitioning to more starports. You can even add like missile turrets where you expect to be attacked. Keep making bases. Get 3-3. Don't forget the ship weapons as well. And also make sure to get the high-sec auto tracking and structure armor, which is very good for TVT, especially because of missile turrets getting +1 range. That's pretty much it, boys. That is pretty much it. Let me know in the chat, let me know in the comments down below if you're watching this on YouTube, what kind of guide you guys would like to see next, whether it's TVP, TVZ, Bio, or maybe something else that's more general, not, based off of a matchup. And maybe I can look into that and make the guides that you guys want. Anyway, that will be it. I will be leaving this replay in the comments down below so you guys can download it. And that's it. I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little mech guide, and I hope this solves all your mech problems. Thank you guys for watching. Have a nice day, and I'll see you guys next time.